In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. You may be seated. Well, a wise man once said, every day choose a random person and tell them that you love them. As a reminder to them that life is full of beauty and joy. But you should scream it at them in German to remind them that life is also confusing and terrifying. This morning's gospel reading shows a group of disciples that were more than a little terrified and confused. They experienced Jesus in a completely different way. Not as a teacher on a hill, but as a ghost-like figure haunting them over the stormy sea. This was a miracle, to be sure, but this was a miracle with a different delivery, maybe even with a different purpose than those that had come before. The passage picks up, as you kind of get from some of the language here. The passage picks up right on the heels of what we read last week, the feeding of the 5,000. The disciples are, I'm sure, still trying to wrap their minds around what had just happened. Jesus had provided bread in the desert, meal for this giant group of people out of nowhere, seemingly. A little more than just a little bit of bread and maybe a few sardines. Jesus had given manna of a sort from heaven in the form of this supernatural multiplication that he does. The disciples were understandably astounded by this, I'm sure as all the other people that were there. But we also get a sense, especially from this morning's passage, that they didn't really know maybe the purpose of this. Why did Jesus choose to provide this meal to a crowd? Was it to gain a bigger audience, or to just temporarily fill the stomachs of those who were listening to him? Was the entire miracle just meant to do just that? Just, satiate the hunger for a few hours of a few thousand people? But we know this story picks up right as the last, few baskets are being gathered up, right as the people are being dismissed. Right after all that, it says Jesus puts them on a boat. Mark uses that integral term here that he so often uses in his gospel, immediately. And he always seems to use it in these kind of hinge moments where, it might be easy for us to get kind of hung up or stuck on what just happened. Mark always uses this term. He says, immediately Jesus went, or immediately this happened. Almost as a way of saying, hey, don't get stuck here. Don't get caught up. Let's keep the action going. There's something else I want to show you. Mark throws in that term immediately, so we know the story is moving. The action is going forward. At this point in the story, Jesus, of course, separates from his disciples. He sends them on. He puts them on a boat, go over the Sea of Galilee to the other side. I'll meet you there. Jesus, instead of going with him, he ascends a nearby mountain and he prays alone. He recharges. The disciples are left to struggle, it seems, with this sudden tempest that seems to have come out of nowhere. Presumably the weather's fine when they get the boat. It's been said that the sailing conditions on the Sea of Galilee can turn in an instant. You got winds funneling in from the western hill country, and they can stir up these sudden waves and stir up the waters quickly. And even more violent are the winds that come off the hills of the east, the Golan Heights. And due to the simple fact that the Sea of Galilee acts as a sort of trap for these winds, the conditions just in a few seconds can turn pretty deadly to fishermen. And this seems to be what happened. The disciples, it says they strain against the wind late into the evening. Normally, in good conditions, this trip would have probably taken a few hours. But the wind was against them, it says. So what do? They're left struggling against it. They drop the sails, they pull out the oars, they're going to row. No one has slept, presumably. Everybody's probably exhausted. Conditions are chaotic, the waves are crashing, and the wind is whipping around their little boats. Their eyes are getting a little bleary. What do they see just before the morning breaks? What do they see across the surface of the water but a figure? This ghostly figure in the darkness coming towards them. Turn your mind for a moment back to the very first few words of the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It says the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Here, the very presence of the Creator God is walking across the surface of the sea. The architect of creation, hovering over the face of the waters. Once again, the actions of Christ here, as we see so many times in the Gospels, the actions of Christ serve to prove His divinity. Connect Him providentially with the actions of God all throughout salvation history. Connect those dots for us. Jesus, of course, here demonstrates power over the elemental principles of the world, his ability to circumvent the natural order, the physical laws of nature. Is what should be catching our mind here. Of course, He does it in the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. So many other times in the Gospels, and He does it again here with this strange journey over the Sea of Galilee. So I think when we think of miracles, we often think of God providing something that we need, right? A limb is healed. A disease is snuffed out. The meal is provided. That's what we often see in the Gospels. Our perspective of a miracle usually looks like God giving us something, right? In our modern context, we need a bill paid. We need a relationship mended. We need a new job. We don't often think of a miracle as a way that God uses to simply reveal something about Himself to us. But that's just what miracles are. Miracles are revelations. You see it all throughout the Gospels. Jesus is giving us little bits and clues to the very nature and character of God by what He's doing. The blessing that we get in the physical realm, that healed limb, that demon that is sent running, that's all a byproduct of that revelation. So when we see these miracle stories, we see that Jesus provides and He heals and He mends, yes, but that ultimate purpose is to prove both His omnipotence, His all-powerful nature, and His benevolence. To show us God's loving kindness. This is the nature of God. This is the character of God, to heal and to mend and to love. Of course, in our gospel story this morning, we see God's power over water, demonstrating the fact that the creation is always subject to the Creator, not the other way around. That's our revelation in this miracle story. The creation is always subject to the Creator. And when the Creator comes close, things shift in the physical world. Interestingly enough, the text seems to imply that Jesus, His intention was actually just to keep going. It says his intention was just to walk right past them. Like, Hey guys, just keep sailing. You're good. Of course, what do the disciples do? Right? As soon as they see him, they freak out. They think they finally snapped. But Jesus, of course, seeing their panic, seeing the chaos that they're enduring, Jesus comes close. He gets close to them. Gets in their boat. The presence of God is now in their midst. And when that happens, the chaos calms. Right? The wind dies down. The storm stops. Your anxious hearts are set at ease. So again, in the collective testimony of this whole chapter, again, we've been in chapter 6 for a few weeks now. And really not just in Mark chapter 6, but in all of the gospel records, we see a demonstration of the very presence and power of God in the person of Jesus Christ. And what happens when that presence comes close? This section of the text wraps up. Look at that very last verse in Mark chapter 6, verse 52. It says, "For they had not understood about the loaves, because their heart was hardened." Takes that little dig at the disciples in their previous state of mind. They didn't get it at first. They didn't understand the whole feeding of the 5,000 thing. What does this mean? Is Jesus now just going to be a provider of free food? Is that what our ministry is about now? Are people just going to follow us around and he's going to magically make a meal, whenever they need it, and that will be the end of it? Jesus wakes them up to the reality of the feeding miracle by giving them one that, sort of shakes them to their core. You didn't get it with this, so I'm going to show you with this. They were terrified in the moment, but in the end, I think they realized these miracles aren't just for our physical benefit. They are to reveal something about God to us through Jesus. They are to enlighten our minds to the reality of who this Jesus is. This is God in our midst. Emmanuel, the very author of creation. And we know that this knowledge sets their hearts on fire. Pray that it will do the same for us. Let's pray as we close. Father, we're so grateful for the gospel record. We're so grateful of the faithfulness of the men who recorded these events. We thank you for the miraculous revelation of your nature and your character through this miracle and all the miracles of the gospel. Pray that it would set our hearts on fire for the gospel and for your kingdom. Meet us as we come to the table. Pray this in your name. Amen.